At level 10, all bards get access to magical secrets, and this is where they can pick 2 spells from the list here. And it is a bit of a sad thing that in Baldur's Gate 3 we don't get a choice of every single spell like you would do in 5th edition. We're limited to this number of spells, which is still quite a high number. There are 62 spells here. I did a video previously for the choices you can make at level 6 for lore bards, so I will be building upon that. One thing to take into account here though is that we only get 2 choices at level 10. And unless you're a lore bard, these are the only 2 choices you'll get to make. So swords bards and valor bards, they only get to pick 2 here. Lore bards would have picked 2 at level 6 from this list, and then they get another 2 at level 10. I will be taking into account the power of the spell, whether it's a good spell or not, whether it requires concentration, whether the spell can be upcast, and I'm going to take into account the fact that we can only pick 2. So if you picked Sacred Flame and Ice Knife, this means that you can't pick, I don't know, Fireball or Counterspell. So we have to be very picky with the spells that we choose. What I've got on screen at the moment is where I put the spells in my previous tier list video. I've changed one of the tiers. Before it said, pick this if nobody else in the party has it. I believe that with only 2 choices, we probably shouldn't make that choice. And there aren't that many spells that are like that anyway. So I've changed this to not the worst choice. As in there's worse things below, but you're probably better off picking one of the ones above. And hey, that's how tier list works, right? And I am going to revisit a few of these because we now have included all the spells down here, which include level 4 and level 5 spells. And for lore bards, they only have access up to level 3 spells at level 6. So there will be some downgrades. At the bottom, none of these are going to move up when we've got just 2 choices and we've got some stronger spells available to us. I'm not going to go through all these. If you want to know my reasoning, please go and watch that other video. That's what it's there for. I don't want to make this video twice as long as it needs to be. So my first 2 downgrades are going to be Slow and Spiritual Weapon. I mean, yeah, they're not the worst choice. They're not bad spells, actually. But when we only get to pick 2 spells out of 62, I just don't think they can compare as well to lots of these spells above. I'm keeping all of these ones in the top tier. All of them can be upcast. 2 of them require concentration. The damage is decent. They've got lovely area of effect spells. I'm also going to leave the rest of these here where they are. And the same thing with the item or build dependent, because if you have got a particular build in mind that uses one of these spells, then it can be very good. I personally don't really like Hellish Rebuke being here. I do have a mind to put it back down to the very bottom, but I'm going to leave it there just for the idea that we could use the Hat of Fire Acuity. Right, not the worst choice. I'm going to move down Bone Chill now. By the time we're at level 10, the number of enemies that will heal, I think, is very low. And by the time we're level 10, if you have other spellcasters in the party, they will have access to an extra cantrip. And so maybe someone's going to have Bone Chill anyway. Likewise, at this point, I'm going to move Revivify down. This is all just alphabetical order. This isn't in any particular order of strength. The reason for that is by level 10, we're pretty strong. We should be able to win most fights without dying. Secondly, we do have scrolls. Thirdly, when you get into Baldur's Gate, the Stormshore Tabernacle has some braces that have Revivify on them, and you can go back to Withers. Obviously, there are some battles you can't leave, so maybe that isn't quite possible, but I don't think Revivify is now worth taking. So then that leaves us with the new options. These are the level 4 and level 5 spells we get access to. And the first one, I think, is kind of the most interesting spell here, because level 10 Magical Secrets is the only way to get access to this spell. So in one sense, it is very unique and kind of cool in that way. But what does this do, Banishing Smite? Well, it does 5d10 damage on a hit. It's a bit like a smite spell, and you can use it with a ranged weapon. So I very much do like that. And then if the enemy ends up having less than 50 hit points, they are banished for 2 turns, assuming you can maintain concentration. But it's a level 5 spell. Going to leave it here because I do have to kind of compare it to Banishment. It's not quite the same. It does damage, and there's no saving throw against being banished, so that's good. And I'm going to put Banishment on the same level here. Again, we've got to remember we can only pick 2 spells, and I don't want to pick too many concentration spells. Now, Banishment can be upcast, so you could banish 2 targets potentially, although they do get a saving throw against it. So I kind of like these spells. So maybe I should put them over here. I don't think they belong in the bottom tier down here, and I don't think they're going to be as effective as the spells at the top. The other thing to take into account is that we only get 2 level 5 spell slots. Although there are items that can replenish that. If a spell's going to use a level 5 spell slot, it better damn well be worth it. Next up is Blight. Don't like it, never really have. It's good for single target damage, I guess, but I'm not going to pick it over the ones above. Now, Cone of Cold. This is kind of good. It's going to put it up to here to usually good. It's a level 5 spell. Does a decent amount of damage. It's cold damage, and that's important because it means it can be doubled by making an enemy wet. The area's good. I like the area. It will affect allies, so you have to be very careful, and gives Bards access to another strong area of effect spell, where naturally they don't have access to very many of them. Glyph of Warding is perhaps the one that they would get access to earliest. Conjure Elemental. This is going to go at the top. And this is because if you do get to level 11 on your Bard, then you can upcast this. And that means you get access to the Elemental Myrmidons. And they're strong. They're great. They've got a high armor class. The water one in particular can heal your allies, make everyone wet on the field, and therefore you can use your lightning and cold damage to much greater effect. And it's not concentration, and summons are great for the game. They do slow it down, but it does mean that you get an extra turn per round. The enemies have something else to hit instead of your characters, and they can benefit from buffs such as Aid, and here is Feast. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Conjure Elemental here. Contagion, I've never really found this to be worth it. Maybe I'll try and make some use out of it in the future. Do let me know if you've had some good outcome with Contagion. I think you can cast it on Orin before she reveals herself, before she shapeshifted, and she can, and when you go fight her, she's got the effect of it on her if she's failed all the saving throws. It's kind of one use for it, I suppose. I don't think that makes it worth it for a magical secrets choice though. Death Ward, I so rarely use this anymore. I do want to point out, as a reminder, these are my own personal choices. I'm not making a purely objective tier list here. That's always very difficult because we can't look at things in like a white room. Sometimes the way you play the game is different to each other. So do let me know if you think I've put something in the wrong place and explain why. That would be so very useful, and maybe we'll all learn something. Dominate Beast. I don't think we come across enough beasts for this to be useful. It's concentration as well. Again, I'm not going to pick this as one of my magical secrets. I would barely pick this even if it was like a wizard or a cleric to prepare the spell. Fire Shield. My main complaint about this is it takes an action. One good thing is it isn't a concentration spell, but it does require your character to be hit. Maybe there is a build out there that uses Fire Shield in conjunction maybe with Armor of Agathis. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Without that, I'd shunt it right down to the bottom. I'll stick it up. You tell me what you think. Have you made some good build with Fire Shield? Perhaps that's another one I should take some interest in. Guardian of Faith. Now, as I've played the game more and more and more, I've kind of fallen out of love with this spell. I used to quite like it, and I used to use it in my runs almost every time. At the end of the day, I think the damage it can do is quite limited compared to what we can do with other characters. And the good things about it is it doesn't require concentration. It does do radiant damage, and that can be useful in certain places. And it is a target for enemies, but I don't, in one sense, I guess that's good. But the more damage it takes from attacks, actually that means the less damage it can output. So I don't really want it to be targeted if I want to do as much damage as possible. So I am going to leave it down here, and there's probably something else better above. Ice Storm. Ice Storm is a good spell. Not the best. I don't think it quite deserves to be at the top. It can knock enemies prone. It does some cold damage, so that can be doubled. Does some bludgeoning damage. Potentially useful, especially like skeletons are vulnerable to it. But I don't think it's quite like you're going to be doing so well if it do take it. It's not going to be up here. Kind of comparable to the damage that's done down here. I just kind of wish it could do damage on subsequent turns, but you know, that means it would be concentration, which I don't really want. We've got enough concentration spells as it is. Wall of Fire. It's going to be a difficult one. Is it as good as these spells up here? Maybe not. Is it better than the spells down here? Probably. I feel like if I've got Sleet Storm here, perhaps I should leave Wall of Fire here actually as well. Sleet Storm is one of the best control area of effect spells, such as if you're in the House of Grief, let's say. So good. The Wall of Fire there is also absolutely amazing. Perhaps I'm going to leave it here because we do come across a few enemies that are resistant to fire damage by the time we get to level 10 and afterwards. Perhaps if it was a different damage type, I would put it up higher, but I'm going to leave it in usually good. There's nothing wrong with taking it, and it is better than the majority of the spells down here. And lastly, another wall spell, Wall of Stone. Again, in my own personal experience, just I've so rarely wished that I wanted this. Don't use it. It's concentration. It makes things slightly inconvenient for the enemies and potentially yourself as well, your party. So as a quick recap, So yeah, I will avoid the ones at the bottom. I think there's no way I'm going to take these. These others I will take depending on the situation, depending on the party, often eyeing up the ones at the top because they're generally just very good spells, and perhaps might take the ones down here if I'm feeling a little bit cheeky, a little bit adventurous. You let me know your thoughts, explain why, try and be civil. Thank you for watching and making it this far. Thank you to all the members of my channel, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one.